There's a new artificial intelligence competitor in town, and what does that mean for you, your clients, and your consulting business? Welcome to your Consulting Business Podcast. My name is Russell Pearson. This is episode 116. Today we're talking about DeepSeek, which is the new artificial intelligence competitor that is really making massive waves internationally. And I want to talk about, is it better than what's already out there with OpenAI? And how is it going to affect you in your consulting practice? So let's start with the news. DeepSeek is a new artificial intelligence that's just come out of China. It was released on the 20th of January 2025, which just happened to coincide with the inauguration date of Donald J. Trump. Now, whether you like him or hate him, Donald Trump is absolutely the accelerator for change in whatever environment he's getting into. But him pushing China on one side has China pushing back on the other, and we now have an arms race on the AI front. And that's causing big changes in the stock market, with all sorts of tech prices dropping, and Nvidia dropping by 17% in a single day. So not only do all these things happen, but there's a twist. The big change with this one is it's open source, which now they've made it available to any other developers who want to use the API and work into any projects that they're using. Now that's huge because the other APIs are not open source, and so what the open source nature of this is going to enable is developers to spin off new projects, new tools, and new platforms a lot faster. The other thing that's big in the geopolitical space of this is that Trump has just announced this coalition investment of $500 billion towards a number of private companies who are going to push artificial intelligence in the US, whereas what's come out from China is that this new AI DeepSeek, which is outperforming the rest of them, was only created for $6 million. That's not $6 billion, it's $500 billion on the other side. That's $6 million. I'm going to jump in here and add some additional news that's actually come out since I started the recording of this episode. It's only been a few days, yet DeepSeek has been getting some negative press, funnily enough. Almost every Western country has come out and actually flagged it as a security threat. Now, that does play into the narrative of being this AI arms race, and the question is, which part of this is propaganda and which is reality? I've been watching, and the security threat stuff came out all of a sudden and then has sort of disappeared. And what people seem to be hanging on to is the idea that DeepSeek has stolen information from OpenAI. And they've got this concept called distillation. Now, distillation means that you've been able to use OpenAI or use another model to ask it a whole bunch of questions so that you can learn from the existing model. And so most people are agreeing that that's what DeepSeek have done with OpenAI. Now, is that ethical? Is it not ethical? Well, you can look at OpenAI and say, well, you just scraped the entire internet to come up with the base information for your model. So this meme I really like, which is the idea that OpenAI has gone out and just sort of fished all this information, and then DeepSeek are actually just fishing inside OpenAI's bucket. Is it right? Is it wrong? I don't know. I think that all these new technologies, even if you look at something like Uber, when it first came out, taxis had to be licensed. They actually had to have certain restrictions on whether they could actually run a taxi license and run a taxi company. Then you've got something like Uber come out, where all these people, just general people, start being basically a taxi driver without that sort of regulation on them. And suddenly the taxi departments or the taxi organizations are trying to actually look at the legal ramifications of this with Uber, and at the end Uber win because it just becomes common use. Now the same thing's going to happen with this OpenAI, is it's just going to become common use. And the people who are whinging and trying to get oversight, and they're talking about the ethical side of things, and I think that there's a red flag in that as well. Anyone who's talking about ethics is usually looking to get control, and they're usually trying to get some sort of oversight to make sure that they have some control about where it goes next. And so pay attention to that, where people are talking about it, rather than the competitive nature of, competing products accelerating the development and accelerating the growth. None of the news that's come out is actually scaring me or changing my opinion about what is going to happen next. In fact, the fact that all this competitive news is coming out, and usually it's a bit of mudslinging is coming out from both sides, it's actually showing me that the acceleration is going to move even faster. Now, This is all a little bit of hearsay. You don't 100% know what's actually true, but the reality is people have got the open source platform. It is performing better, which means that we're actually pushing this AI race forward. Now, out of the box, you're probably not going to notice too much difference between using ChatGPT, Claude, or DeepSeek. But what's interesting about it is it has this deep thinking aspect to the way that it works, which enables you to see its thought process. And that's fascinating to actually see how it comes to a decision or how it answers a question. One of the things I was getting DeepSeek to do was go out to the internet. Now, it can't do that. And so I kept asking it different ways to see if it was just like a limitation and whether it actually could do it. Interestingly, I turned on the deep think capability and it started thinking out loud. And so when I asked it the fourth time about whether it could go out to the internet, I was trying to change the way that I was saying it to see if I get a different result. It started saying things like, this is the fourth time that Russell has actually asked this question, which means that my communication mustn't be getting through. Let me think of a different way to communicate this to him. And then it came up with a different answer. So it is fascinating to watch the way it thinks out loud. But how is that going to affect you in your consulting practice? Well, not too much. Is it actually better than the other artificial intelligences? Well, on the numbers, it is. And there is ways to test that using APIs and seeing if we can run it through some paces. And there are all sorts of people doing all sorts of tests to show how it's actually performing at a higher level. So it is a higher performing artificial intelligence, but you really don't notice that unless you're using APIs and you're plugging it into something else. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel, there are hundreds of videos made especially for consultants who run their own business. And if you haven't gone and checked them out, I'd love you to do that. Subscribe, ring the bell so you get notified when the next episode comes available. And so again, back to how does this affect you in your consulting practice? Well, number one, it's not going to affect the way you would interface with these products very much at all. It's still going to be a brainstorming partner or someone that you can push your ideas around with, maybe a reasoning partner, which is useful. The thing that's big about this is it's pushing or accelerating artificial intelligence and the development of artificial intelligence very much in the same way that the US was competing against Russia in the race to the moon, right? So it's going to push the acceleration of that sort of development so that what might have been 2 years off is probably going to be more like 6 months off. What might have been 5 years off, less than 2. And so the path that we're looking at as far as AI with regards to your consulting business is it's going to take up a lot of the computing mental power of a lot of the work that you do. So advice, coming up with decision making, problem solving, which is a large part of the knowledge work that you do as a consultant. So the real question is, what is your role in the very near future? So the first thing this is going to do is it's going to accelerate the change in definition of value. It's not going to be nearly as valuable as it once was to actually get problems solved, because artificial intelligence is going to be able to solve a lot of those problems intellectually. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to be able to solve them physically, and there's still going to have to be that human interaction there. But again, what is the role for the change agent, being the consultant, the person who would normally help with that process in that situation? Well, I think the key is to look back in time and say what has changed over time and learn from the past. So if we just look all the way back to the start of the 19th century, where we've got the feudal system, that then moves into the industrial system, and really the difference there is we now start to look at a different way of developing ourselves so that we become more useful for the industrial system. Before that, it was physical labor. Now we're using mental labor, and so people are going to school, people are accelerating that by going to university, and the more you become skillful, the more valuable you become. So flash forward, we get to the 21st century. Suddenly the internet is something that people are using. We have a Googleization of information. And now anyone can get any information at the push of a button. So even by the time we got to about 2010, it had already changed from being a knowledge economy to being a wisdom economy, where suddenly it was not about knowing things, it was knowing how to apply things. And so how do I make information relevant? How do I make it contextually relevant to this situation that I am in? And that's why I would get a consultant in to help me work through that process. Well, now we're in this arms race of AI, and it's going to change again. I firmly believe that the next step will be the Googleization of artificial intelligence, which means that there will be a competitor that will rise to the top, and this will be the one that day to day most people will use in their daily lives. And it's going to be able to answer questions for them, and it's going to be able to actually do reasoning and problem solving for them. And so as a result, there's going to be a reduction of value in just simple intellectual problem solving. And so what's going to change? Well, it's going to take a little while to change, because there's a lot of people now in this current generation who still like to ask a human for their advice, because often there is a anxiety about making decisions. There's like, I have too many paths, which one do I decide? And yes, the artificial intelligence can help you do that, but there is still a generation that would like to speak to a human for reassurance. The interesting thing, I think, that in the way that we're actually moving is it's going to be less about consulting, and it's actually going to be more about mentoring. Because one of the things that gets over the anxiety of making decisions is social proof. If you, as a consultant, have social proof of things that you've done before and people that you've helped before, people are going to have much more trust in that than in the hypothetical idea of designing strategy. So that's going to be much more useful for people believing that you can get them to their next step because you've been there before. And so understanding that consulting, I think we're already here, is not just about consulting strategy. It's about, when do I need to consult? When do I need to mentor? Yes. When do I need to coach? When do I need to facilitate? And so having a mixed modality in the way you work is going to be key. Value itself doesn't change. There is always going to be an outcome that people want. And there's going to be three levers on that, which is, can I get there easy? Can I get there fast? And can I get there low risk? And so if you're still able to add those value elements to getting people an outcome, you're still going to be incredibly valuable. The mentoring piece, which is maybe one that's been in the back seat for a long time, is now going to be the front seat, and it's going to be the thing that people will trust as we move into this new phase of technology. When it comes to technology, and there's always changes in technology, I think there's also a lesson that we can learn from Kodak. Now, Kodak stuck to their guns about film, and they continued to make and sell and push film as really the primary operation for the business when digital cameras were coming out. And it wasn't till towards the end of their run that they started moving into that digital space, and so they lost the opportunity. What they could have done is actually understand that really what their product was about was a simple and fast way to capture memories, right? And so the digital camera version of that was a faster and simpler way to catch memories, because we no longer had to actually take it and get the film exposed. We didn't need to have like the week lag time between actually getting some exposure done, right through to the 1 hour processing plants that ended up being the case at the end there. But that was the case of things moving through a speeding up and accelerating process. So very similar to what's happening now. And so the people who will remember and understand that what we're looking for is, what is the perception of value in the case of Kodak, an easy and fast way to capture memories. In the case of what you do for your clients, understanding it's not how you do what you do, but what you do for them that's going to continue to be the valuable thing. So whether you continue to do it as yourself, then look at ways that you can do that where you can outcompete technology, because technology can't mentor people. It hasn't proven it can do stuff on its own. But over time, it may. And on the flip side, you can use the best of technology and mix it with the things that you do if that's the best way to enhance the value for your clients. Now, the other thing that's going to raise in value is community. Now, community is not new. Since the dawn of man, we got together in tribes. We have always had communities. But as we continue to develop digital technology, there becomes a separation of individuals into very siloed lives, right? And so the ability to bring people together in like-minded communities so that people don't feel alone is a massive opportunity for us as not only consultants, but leaders in our field. So what is the value of a relationship? Because I think that is the next frontier for value. Relationship capital. Investing in relationships, understanding how we can better do that, understanding that technology is not necessarily going to be the answer, because it's not about relationship faster, it's not about how do we accelerate the relationship, but how do we go deeper in actually forming stronger and deeper relationships, both individually and as a community. So within a community model, there are many opportunities, and one of those opportunities is to lead. Now, there are multiple leaders usually in most communities, not always just one. And so, what leadership roles can you play either in the communities that you found or the communities that you join? And so, leadership and then role modeling leadership, I think, are one of the new economies of trust moving into the next phase. We're already seeing this with individual personal brands now eclipsing business brands internationally and forming a lot more value and, if not a lot more power, than large international organizations. And so, a great place for your investment so that you're positioned for the next phase of consulting is really to start working on that personal brand. How can you become a leader within your space? How can you set yourself up to be connected to more people so that you can create better influence through the relationships that you have? And so back to the mentoring part, leadership in this next phase is going to be by the mentors, by those who are showing they're walking a certain path rather than telling people that they are. There is already a distrust in leadership across the globe. And there is a retrust in those that are being seen to do, and there's an integrity in that. So role modeling leadership, rather than saying you are a leader or actually selecting to be a leader simply because of position of power, in actual fact being a leader by role modeling the role of leader within your organization by the things that you do. So it's lived experience and seeing people see your lived experience and actually follow you on your journey. So it's being visible, it's being transparent, it's being in conversation with these communities of people and enabling them to see the path that you're walking, enabling them to get behind and follow. So you're actually creating a future for people rather than telling people that the future is there. They're actually seeing you head in that direction and they will follow you because of your movement rather than you pointing in a direction and say go. And so really the biggest change of all in all of that is the traditional consultant for hire, the gun for hire that comes in to solve problems. That's going to go away very fast because we're going to have an artificial intelligence or multiple artificial intelligences that can actually come through and do the problem solving academic side of the work that we do as consultants. But being able to mentor, coach and guide people through that process is really where the new game's played. And so back to DeepSeek. How is it affecting what we're doing today? Probably not a lot, but what it is doing is it's accelerating the process for tomorrow, which means that right now is the time to start getting into gear. And that's why I recommend the Select Consultancy, because it enables you to select the clients you work with, work anywhere in the world, which you really can now with the technology we have available at our fingertips, and actually to select when you work with people. And the only way to get into that position is to move to mentor, which means that you need to have three things that are very, very clear. Number one, you don't just have expertise, you have outcome expertise. So expert in getting people outcomes. That's going to be more crucial than ever before, because if it's just about knowledge, they're going to go to an artificial intelligence. The other thing is client flow. So not expecting clients to just show up through referral, but know how to engage people, again using mechanisms like communities to build trust and bring people from stranger all the way through to client. And then being able to exit from those clients on a regular basis so we continue to refresh the way we work with people. There are a number of consultants who have sat with the same 10 clients for like 10 years and they move out into the world again to get new clients, and it's almost like they were in a marriage for 10 years and they've had a breakup and now they're back at the dating scene and the dating scene's all weird, right? So client flow is about being able to refresh the way you work and being relevant and contextual by having new clients on a regular basis so that we continue to stay fresh and we continue to adapt and evolve as the environment and the world changes around us. And the final thing is authority brand. If we're not doing the work to build our personal brand so that we're recognized not just for our expertise, but for the value that we add to the community that we are part of, which is another way of saying niche. If we're not doing those things, we're going to miss out on the opportunities to be asked to mentor people through the next stages. So what do we need to do now? Well, number one, we need to get an awareness of what's going on, which means that you need to be engaging with this artificial intelligence to put it through its paces and see what it can do. If you looked at this technology over a year ago or even 6 months ago, you may have looked at it and said, well, it's average at best, it's not worth my time. But I can tell you, things have changed in the last year, they've changed in the last 6 months, they've changed in the last 30 days. And we're now at a point where, yes, out of the box, sometimes the answers that it gives or the problem solving it does they're a little average. But what we can do now, especially with agents and the way we can work with some of these interfaces with longer term memories, we can start to coach, train, and mentor these pieces of technology so that they eclipse our own capacity to do great work. And so understanding what is available, engaging with artificial intelligent agents so you can understand how they work, mentoring these agents so that you can actually have peer conversations. For so long, consultants said, I would love to get an employee in if I could just clone myself, right? That would be great. I could step back from the business. Well, now intellectually, you can clone yourself. You can give it the information it needs and it'll start coming up with answers that are as good, if not better, than what you can do yourself in a fraction of the time. And so what you can do from there, and one of the things that I do is I go, how else can you improve? What am I also not mentoring you on? What am I not asking you to do? And you'll see that it'll actually rise above you. And it doesn't take much, right? 1-2% better for suddenly the answers that are coming back to be things that you may not have even considered before. So getting these agents up to a point where not only are they working as well as you, but you're actually able to have these peer conversations so that they can help you identify your next step. Understanding that there will be a Googleization of artificial intelligence because we are in a race to the top now. There's going to be a competitor who comes out on top, and then the world will change. I'd love to know what you think of DeepSeek. Have you looked at it yet? Have you seen what it can do? Are you using it in any way? Do you see it as just another AI thing that really is irrelevant right now? Are you scared of maybe what's going on, or do you see it as just another distraction that you should be avoiding? We're constantly coming up with new resources to help people take advantage of the changes that are happening in the world of consulting. And if you're interested in what's available right now, go to russellpearsonprograms.com and you can get the current resource there absolutely free. This is the Your Consulting Business Podcast. My name's Russell Pearson. Until next time, stay passionate, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.